everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the concept of connection and the things that have come up frequently as themes in the last readings about separation, illusion, and disconnect. So I wanted to ask the cards, working with Cartouche again today, I wanted to ask the cards, how can we become more connected? Connected to ourselves, connected to our environment, connected to others around us. And it was obvious from this reading that actually what the answer to all of it was becoming more connected would actually reduce the illusion of separation, or becoming actually aware of the underlying connection that's always there. We're just kind of tuned out of it. So this reading hopefully will help clarify a little bit about this, and I'll also get back to it at the end, discussing a little bit more about what is this grand underlying connection. Okay, so this is a star spread again, and what it looks like today is these 5 cards. We'll start with the bottom left card, which is the nature of the question. Since this was a contemplation on connection and disconnect, the card that came up is the Buckle of Isis in reverse. Now, this card in reverse has so much of the elements of barrenness and selfishness to it. And when you think about being disconnected from ourselves and our surroundings, there are elements of selfishness that come up, especially to our current day society, that would speak to this lack of understanding and lack of connection to ourselves and what is around us. There's also a disloyalty to self or to beliefs or to others, and this kind of disloyalty basically leads to motives that may not be very pure at the end of the day. So questioning of motives, as shown in previous themes and other readings, questioning of motives, of thoughts, of energy streams is important in figuring out, well, what's the agenda over here? So our nature right now is a little bit of selfishness and disconnect. The reason for bringing this question up to the collective is the card of Sirius again in reverse. And in this situation, this reverse card, let's say in the upright position, it's universal awareness. Well, in the reverse position, it's universal unconsciousness. It's the collective unconsciousness, not aware of itself, not aware of its potential, not aware of its skills, basically living out a tortured play and situation with itself. So there's a lot of stubbornness and aggressiveness, non-cooperation that occurs in a situation where there's a disconnect. And we can begin to see how insane that is when we talk further as this reading goes on about how everything is ultimately connected and how all of this is going to affect each other. The factors to consider was a very interesting card. It came out as the Twins card in reverse. Now, the Twins card is integration and partnership. It's basically the unifying of the subconscious and the conscious, of the masculine energies and the feminine energies. It's unity and balance and harmony. When it's found in reverse, we're talking about some parts that have split off from the whole. And that's exactly the situation that we find in the current paradigm. We have aspects of ourselves that have individually split off from the source of all things, and they live out their lives in feelings of separation and isolation, a kind of suffering when we're split off from ourselves. Now, to make this situation a little bit more comprehensible with an example, this card speaks about an inner wound or a part of the self that has split off from you, and this person attempts to turn to something outside of themselves to heal this pain. So, for example, a person that is suffering turning to any kind of substance or drug or food or another person trying to heal themselves. The lesson that this card brings at the end of the day is that everything that is being sought outside is actually within. The journey outside is actually within. So if that person were to seek the root of the pain and try to heal that, there would be less suffering versus, for example, turning to alcohol and then maybe becoming an alcoholic, and then the family is affected and there's suffering, there's division. So how can we become more connected? Well, becoming a little bit more aware of the dynamics of the division to begin with. Now, the solution card. Nephthys. This card is beautiful to come up over here. It basically speaks of receptivity. It's psychic gifts, tranquility, and receiving, allowing things to come to us. Now, how many times have we heard the concept of great inventors or inventions and ideas that just came to people's minds? It's not so much that they thought of the most statistically probable idea that would change the face of humanity as much as they went to sleep and they had a dream, or they were walking around and an idea just came to them. And how many times do we experience ideas just coming to us? Inspiration. So I think it's very opportune to have this card come up here when asking about how can we connect more. Well, maybe we need to remove a little bit of the barriers to that connection, being open to receiving. And sometimes the truth could dance naked in front of us and we wouldn't even be able to perceive it simply because we're using a specific kind of belief system or a specific kind of lens to observe the world. So hearkening back to the Sphinx energies of previous readings, being mindful and observing our thoughts and our surroundings can allow us to basically figure out what we're seeing in front of us and what use it can have for us. I really like this card. It also says something about the conditions for the change to come have not yet crystallized. They haven't come yet. So it's okay, each individual being where they're at, because each change comes in its own time. Now, an outcome for more connection is the Osiris card. This is the card of regeneration, rebirth, and renewal. It comes with an indication of spiritual wisdom and spiritual integrity. It's gaining access to all of these understandings, and I think that what it denotes is self-care at the end of the day. If we're talking about connection, we can't forget connection to the self. Like, the body is intelligent and it's speaking to us at multiple points throughout the day, actually the whole time. So beginning to listen a little bit more to the subtle signs of what we truly need versus urges and thoughts and desires, what actually is happening on deeper levels, can aid us in becoming a little bit more connected with what is around us. Why this is important will become apparent when we discuss the concept of what is it that we're connecting to on a bigger level. So this reading here really indicates that if there's going to be any kind of healing of the collective, there's got to be healing of the individual. And the steps towards healing of the individual are various, but they include things like integrating the self, so finding the root of the issue and attempting to truly heal that versus looking to external events or situations or people to help numb the pain. It includes things like being open and receptive to receiving instruction and divine influence, and things like being open and ready to be rebirthed and renewed, so long as we don't really stand in the way of these influx of energies. Now, what is it that we are connected to on a grander level? Well, I think it's been termed the unified field of consciousness. So that there's something that is unique as well as shared by all of us, and it's this large field of energy. It may seem to us like we are separate material objects, but we are not. And perhaps to a Hindu sage, this would be madness. To them, it's very obviously Maya, which means illusion. Now, to try to illustrate what this means, I'm going to go with an allegory by Plato. You might have heard of it. It's called Plato's Cave. So, with this story, he basically goes on to say that, let's say there's a cave, and there are a bunch of individuals seated near the wall of the cave. They're facing the wall, and they're looking up at the wall. Now, they don't turn around, and they only stare at this wall. What is on this wall is actually a series of cutouts or characters that are being moved in front of a fire that's behind them. And all they're seeing on the wall are shadows. But do they know that what they are seeing on the wall is shadows? Are they aware that the reality that they are experiencing is anything but the reality that they are experiencing? No. To them, let's say they've grown up only knowing this reality, and so this wall in front of them and these characters on the wall are the truth. There is nothing that is to indicate that this is not the truth. Now, let's even consider the fact that one of these individuals might turn around and see the fire and see individuals holding characters and moving them in front of the fire. It would be a vast stretch of the imagination for this individual to truly believe his eyes and understand that what is being seen is creating his initial reality. There might even be denial, but there you go. There's another level of reality. To those sitting at the fire and holding the characters, they know that the people sitting and staring at the wall are not experiencing reality. They know that, so that's another level. Now let's consider maybe one of the people in this cave escapes and exits and goes outside. And this person now is subject to the natural elements. This person is able to look up at the sun and the stars and the moon. And he experiences this whole other reality. How is he going to explain this to anybody that's on the inside of the cave? Well, first of all, they're not going to believe him. But second of all, how is he actually going to use words of the relative realities that they've lived in to describe that world? So that's just a little story to illustrate a little bit about the nature of reality. How there can be one shared experience, but it could be experienced very differently. And this goes back to the notion of an illusion. Perhaps we could question a lot of the things that we experience about our daily lives because most of them maybe are something that we were taught to experience about our lives or told to experience about our lives. And until we experience something different, there's almost no reason for us to consider otherwise. So this connected, unified field of consciousness is actually what permeates and is inside all of things. We simply experience it through the lens of different individuals and different belief systems. And the more disconnected we are from this underlying reality, the more we're hurting ourselves, the more we're capable of hurting others. I wanted to bring up a book that I've been enjoying greatly. It's called The Cosmic Game by Stanislav Grof. Now, this book brings together a lot of studies and ancient teachings about exactly what we're talking about right now, how ancient teachings were aware all along that there is an element of unreality to the world that we live in. There's an illusion about it, and that there's underlying worlds or realities that make the whole thing make sense. Another aspect of this that is very interesting is that, as Shakespeare said, the whole world is a play, and we're all characters. We're all different characters that come up on stage dressed in different things and saying different things, and we all play our part. And at the end of the day, it creates this grand picture of either a tragedy or a comedy or a romance, but we're all these different characters playing different parts of ourselves. This is something that has changed the way that I interact with everything in my life, because whenever somebody says or does something, it says a lot more about them than it says about me, because it's speaking about their belief or their experience. But at the same time, it can reflect something back to us about ourselves. And this is part of the unfolding, awakening, and beginning to understand the connection between all things. I wanted to read a little quote from this book for closing off today. Okay, so he says that the material world is perceived as a dynamic play of cosmic creative energy. The experience also reveals the undivided unity underlying the world of separation. It shows that what we encounter in everyday life are not discrete individuals and solid objects, but integral aspects of a unified energetic field. However absurd that this may seem to a naive realist, this conclusion is in full agreement with findings of modern physicists. They indicate that what we ordinarily perceive as solid matter is essentially empty. 20th century science has thus finally provided for the startling claim of Hindu sages that our perception of the world as made of dense material objects is an illusion, or maya. Now, what does this have to do with any of us individually? Well, perhaps it doesn't have to do much right now. Perhaps it's not meant to be so mentalized and intellectualized. However, the lesson at the end of the day is that there is something that we can be tapped into. There is something that we can be connected to. And the keys to unlocking how we experience ourselves within ourselves and with others are ours to find and ours to unlock. Well, I hope that this has given some food for thought, and that everybody is having wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, or night. And thank you for watching.